I'm starting. Hey, welcome everybody to Do You Believe? Thanks for joining us tonight. And I have an awesome guest tonight. Peter Kling. Is it Kling or Klein? Kling. And he has written an awesome book, Letters to Earth, We Will Survive the Armageddon. Now, tonight, it might be a little controversial for some of you, but you know what? This is entertainment. We're bringing our guest on to share his views and the information that he has to share with us. So everybody, let's welcome Peter to the show. Welcome, Peter. Thank you so much for being my guest tonight. I'm so excited to have you. You have no idea. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Noreen, and thank you for having me on the show. It's certainly a pleasure to be here. And get a chance to share this information with some more people. And you know, it's interesting that you brought up the word controversial, because so many people have a lot of specific viewpoint, but I try to cover everything. I try to put everything in a very logical order, and we'll get into that. And you know, Armageddon, here's a big problem with Armageddon. People hear Armageddon, they think, oh no, it's the end of the world, we're all going to die. No, wait, stop. Nobody ever reads past Armageddon and the wonderful things that happen, and the people. Yeah, it's going to be a bump to get over, but once we're over that hump, the things that we have in store for us are fantastic. They're beyond imagination almost. Think of having perfect DNA. Think about being able to telepathically communicate at will with anyone that you want, anywhere, not only on the earth, but within the multiverse in which we live.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you see, nobody makes it past Armageddon. No, wait a minute. Continue to read. It goes on and it says that death will be done away with, and there won't be any more.
But Peter,
anymore. Yeah, go ahead.
Where did this Armageddon come from? Where did this all start?
Well, it actually, if we want to get technical about it, it all starts. It probably started well over 100,000 years ago, maybe a million. Now, when I say years ago, I'm speaking of Earth time. But we have to qualify a few things. The first thing we have to qualify is where did we come from?
Right.
And why are we here? And I gave you a little taste about the future, but there's a lot more to come besides that. And it's interesting. And a lot of people say, oh, what happens if we're going to all live forever? Oh, wait a minute. We'll get there. Don't worry about it now. Let's get there first. Because we're in a very interesting time in history, a time that will never be repeated again. We are having several things happening pretty close all to the same time. First of all, something that a lot of people don't realize is that we're actually starting to go through the photon belt. This happens once every 11,000 years, and we're just starting it.
What's the photon belt?
We'll get to that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The other thing is, we are approaching galactic alignment. This is a once in 26,000 year occurrence. Once every 26,000 years, and we're living through it right now. This is the time. According to the Mayans, they chiseled this in stone, and it all comes down to December 21st, 2012. That's the galactic alignment. Is that going to be the end of the world? No. So don't worry about it. The world's going to be here. And we have one other thing, which is going to cause a problem. It is going to cause a problem here on Earth, and that is the possibility and most likelihood of a brown dwarf star or another planet that's going to be circling very close to us, between us and the sun. And this is part of prophecy as well. And so we've got all these things happening at the same time. What are the chances? What are the chances? And this time next year, in November, we're going to have a very spectacular thing, something that we can all see. And that is a fantastic comet. Astronomers are calling it a once-in-a-civilization's lifetime to view the intensity of this comet that's coming by. Would this be the blue Kachina of the Hopi prophecies that is followed by the red Kachina of the Hopi prophecies? well, let's be alert to the events that we see happening. But where did this all start? Where did everything start? And you know, a lot of people believe in God, but it's a fact now that more people actually believe in aliens than believe in an almighty God. Yeah. And, you know, and I studied the Bible. This is interesting. I studied the Bible. And a lot of people say, oh, the Bible, what good is that? You know, that's been changed so many times. Whoa, wait a minute. Have you studied the Bible for 50 years?
Yes, tell them a little bit about yourself so they know where you're coming from.
Well, here's an interesting thing. A little bit about my life. I actually started learning. I wasn't being directly taught, but I was always, or there when I was being taught, because I was just a little kid. I was actually not even 5 years old yet, and I started to understand about the Bible. I started understanding the history, the prophecy was being read. I was taking in the information, and then I started being taught the Bible. And I was taught the history of the Bible and the prophecies of the Bible and how they apply in well, at that time it was the future, but it wasn't that far off in the future. You know, as a little kid, 5 years, you know, that's your whole life. It's a long time. And now we look at it, wow, 5 years ago, weren't we under the Bush administration 5 years ago? And you know, we went through a whole 4 years of a presidency in this amount of time. It just flew by. But I started being educated before the age of 5, and not in religion. I mean, I got to specify this, not in religion. I didn't learn, you know, the Hail Marys. I didn't learn the prayers. I didn't learn the saints' names or anything like that. There was no religious dogma. It was education. It was tantamount to what you would find in any good college today. As a matter of fact, the information that I know, they don't teach in the college today, and that's unfortunate, and neither does religion. But you wouldn't know it to listen to them. But here's the thing. I had an anomaly. I've had lots of anomalies happen, but I had one very significant thing. Was it formed a paradox in my life. And this happened at the age of 9. I had a dream, and about 2 weeks later, that dream came true. And it wasn't anything, you know, end of world type situation. It was like almost an everyday occurrence, but wait a minute, there was a strange caveat at the end. And there's no way that anybody could have said this was a normal event. And in my dream, I get to see these 3 men walking up the street. And I was actually taking my dog for a walk, and as I'm coming back home, and in my dream it was about 9:15 at night, that's what time my job was to go take the dog for a walk. And on my way home, I see these 3 men. Now, no big deal. Everybody's seen 3 people walking together, except one man was dressed like Jack Frost. The other man was dressed like one of Robin Hood's merry men, and the third one was dressed like a hippie.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and I had this dream, but it's about 10 days later it came about. Now this was in the month of October. These guys could have been going to a Halloween party. I have no clue. But when I saw them, and these were the people from my dream, I was terrified. And I ran home, and now the dog that I had was a German-trained guard dog. And my dad had a business, and so I was as safe as anything with the dog there, because he was an attack dog. And I told him to watch these guys. So him and myself watched these 3 men walk into the darkness of the night, and then I ran home. I hightailed it and ran up the stairs and ran into the house and said, Ma, I had a dream that just came true. And she was washing the dishes, and she said, oh, that's nice, dear. It's time for you to go to bed now. And I was like, what? You're sending me to bed? I just had this earth shit. You know, I didn't say this, but I was internalizing this. You know, I was like, I was just sent to bed for having a dream that came true. Wait a minute, I gotta know about this. And in that 1 second, that whole avenue of exploration was turned off. And I remember the next day lamenting, you know, how did this all happen? How was I able to see into the future? I was talking to my little 9-year-old friends at the time, and they believed that it happened. You know, I believed it happened. It happened to me. It happened enough for me to start looking to science for answers on how this was possible. And by the age of 10, I started studying chemistry, and I indeed went through.
Well, that's an awful lot for a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I was one of those kids that back then you get your own chemistry set. I talked my grandmother into buying me a chemistry set. And I started teaching myself and learning. I'd read the little cards there and how to do the little experiments. And then when I was in school and was able to take the different science programs, I always excelled in science. I excelled in chemistry. And I wound up going to work for one of the major laboratories in the United States in research and development.
Wow.
But you know, here's the thing. The Bible education never stopped. It never, ever stopped. And by the time I was 13, I knew essentially the cover to cover the whole Bible. By the time I was 16, I was looking at the Bible from the standpoint of, I'm in trouble. If I don't find answers that I'm looking for with what the Bible says, I'm as good as dead. And now think about that, a 16-year-old with that mindset. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of weight for the world, because here's the thing. I kept on seeing future events. And for a while, I thought I was in league with the devil because I couldn't figure out how this was going on. Now, I heard and read about different Bible prophets that were given messages. As a matter of fact, it's interesting, Samuel, who wrote the book of 1st and 2nd Samuel, was essentially put up, he wasn't put up for adoption, but he was given, at the age of 5, he was given to the temple. And now the Levites were in charge of his education. And somewhere thereafter, around maybe the age of 8 or 9, God started talking through Levi. Now, I'm not saying God's talking through me, okay? But I am saying that what had happened is that now I'm studying science, and I'm studying the Bible, and what could be further apart from each other than science and the Bible? One says, hey, the earth was created in a number of days, the other, or a number of years, whatever the case might be. Let's call them time periods. Because, back in my father's day, things were a lot different than they were in my day. And my grandfather's day is a totally different another time period. So don't get hung up in a 24-hour day or a set number of years. There were time periods. We know that because of the fossil record. But, I've got evolution on one side, and I got creation on the other side, and neither the twain shall meet until I started to understand this. Now, I did take a class on metaphysics. When I was 22, I finally found a class on metaphysics. And I started to understand how it was possible that we could see little snippets of the future. And it expanded my mind of the universe around us. And so I'm thinking about my new technologies here, and I'm still contemplating what's going on in my life. And one day I'm reading the book of Job. And in Job, the 38th chapter, God's talking to Job, and he says, have you seen my storehouses of snow, which I have saved for the day of distress and war? And I'm thinking, Job lived in the Middle East. What would he know about storehouses of snow? Then I started thinking about storehouses. Okay, this is a place where you're keeping snow and ice. Where are the storehouses of snow? So I literally closed my eyes, and I used my metaphysics training here, and I relaxed and meditated for a minute, and I kind of opened my eyes through the eyes of Job and said, well, what would Job see? And I'm looking around, and I can see the snow on top of the mountains, and but that's not much. So I started to remove myself from the earth, and now I'm looking at the earth from outer space, and as I'm going into outer space, I'm seeing the snow-capped mountains, and then all of a sudden I realized the ice caps are there. How foolish me. The ice caps are the storehouses of snow. And I'm thinking, how do you use the snow? How can you use it as a weapon? Because it's used in a time of war. And I said, well, what can you do with snow and ice? You can either make more of it, or you can melt it and make less. And I thought, well, what would be worse? And I thought, well, if you melted the ice, it would raise the ocean levels up. And not only that, but it would redistribute the weight around the earth. You'd have a literal shift in weight from all the melting water. Water likes to seek its own level. So you would have all this ice in the ocean. Now, how deep would the oceans get? Well, unfortunately, this was 1980, 1981, somewhere around there. It took about another 10 years before the term global and warming would come about, and it took 10 years to find that information. According to the latest data, if all the ice melted, the oceans would be about 285 feet deep. Considering 80% of the population lives within 90 miles of the coast, a lot of lives can be affected. Yeah. I mean, let's take a look at Hurricane Sandy. That affected the people, and that was just a storm that came up. Now, I say just a storm, but it wasn't just a storm. I've kind of nicknamed it Synthetic Sandy. and we'll get into this maybe at another point, but here's a little homework for everybody to do. Go look up HARP, because Sandy was steered by using HARP, by using high energy weapons. Interesting. No one ever, and I said, I lived in the Northeast for over 45 years. I've never seen a hurricane come up there, or any tropical depression, come up the East Coast and make a left-hand turn and run right through a cold front. The
perfect storm. So you're saying that was it the government then that caused this to happen?
Well, not necessarily our government. It could have. There's 17 of these machines, and the United States owns about 4 or 5 of them, at the most. One they can tow it around in the water. That's nice. But there are 17 of these machines, and the United States, Russia, and China are each building a new one down in Antarctica.
So why would they want this to happen?
There could be a number of reasons, but that's a whole another program. Let's get back to where we came from.
Oh, okay. But now I want you to tell the viewers too that what happened to you right after your 18th birthday.
Well, yeah. See, here's the other side. Here's something else that happened. And remember, I said when I was 16, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world around, and I said, boy, I felt like I was in league with the devil because I would know things before they happened. And not all the time. It wouldn't be like it happened all the time. It changed over the years, as a matter of fact, how this occurs. But at 16, I was still having dreams, and then the dreams would come true. And if I had a dream 3 nights in a row, guess what? The result of whatever happened in that set of dreams happened. It didn't make any difference. It happened. And it became terrifying after a while. Well, shortly after my 18th birthday, this was I think it was about the last week of May into the first week of June. At one night, and I was home by myself, and one night I had gone to bed. Maybe it was about 10 or 11 o'clock, somewhere around there. And someone, I say someone, it seemed like someone was in my room, and they said, look, the prince arrives. And I bolted up out of bed, and I'm like, what? And I look straight out my window, and I see flashing lights there, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I run to the window, and I look up, and what I see, I can only think of Eric von Daniken at this, well, it looks like what you would call a chariot of the gods. And I'm thinking, what am I seeing? It was a metallic gold molded chariot with gold metallic horses attached to it, and it looked like a landing craft, and there was just kind of like driving it like it was a chariot.
Oh my God.
There was a guy there with a beard and a crown, and he looked like a prince. And I'm like, what in the world is this all going on? And it winds up landing on the other side of the house. And I run around to look out the other window, and it was gone, vanished totally. And I'm like, what in the world just happened? What did I just see? What just occurred? And I was kind of shaken up by this, and eventually I relaxed and was wondering what's going on, and I went back to sleep. And that's when the weirdness kind of got a little bit more intense, because I found that I was having contact with these, whoever it was, but there was aliens that I was having contact with. They looked very human, and I was being transported from my bedroom to what seemed to be the bowels of a castle. Everything was underground.
So they looked like us. They didn't look like the Greys with the big eyes. They looked like a human.
They looked very human, just a little bit taller. Just a little bit taller. Now, I'm not going to say that I was physically moved anywhere. I believe, and after analyzing this over and over and over, and I believe what this were memory implants, because I'd always wake up back in my bed. It wasn't like I was, smelled cold or nasty or anything like that. So, I don't know if anyone can see the movie Total Recall, but, in Total Recall, you want to go on a vacation, you go to a little spot, and they give you a memory implant. And when they're done, you wake up and you say, oh, wow, what a great vacation I had. You have this complete memory of a vacation. Well, I was having this complete memory of an event that I was at, and I was being socialized. I was being socialized, introduced to different people, and this went on, not every night, but this went on several times throughout the next 2 weeks. And at the end, when just about all in, I was in a room full of a lot of these other life forms, and they were all dressed in kind of like, as you would picture perhaps a monk, but the cloth was very satiny, very shiny. Whenever I was with them, I was also dressed the same way. And so it was like the hood and the robe together.
So they handed that to you for you to put that on? Do you remember that?
I believe the first time that I was there, yes, they did hand it to me. Said this is what you're to wear. But every time that I was transported, I already had this robe on. So I don't know. Maybe it was something that was symbolic. It was all part of the memory implant.
And you were able to see their faces even though they had the hoods on.
Well, the hoods didn't cover the faces. The hoods, just kind of like came to the top of the head. They didn't really go far beyond the faces, and yeah, no, they weren't all hunched over. Everybody stood up straight. So, they were very friendly. They were very accommodating, and everybody was happy.
Okay, let me ask you this: did they actually speak to you, or was this through your mind?
You tell me. I have no clue.
Oh.
Now, what I heard in my bedroom, I know I heard because I bolted up out of a sound sleep. But the rest of it is, I can't say that I was ever taken any place. The only thing I can say is that I have these memories.
Oh.
And so I'd wake up in the morning and I'd say, well, wasn't that an interesting dream? Well, not exactly. I mean, it was happening while it was going on. Sometimes I'd wake up shortly, after it was over. But typically, I'd have these memories the next morning of what happened the night before.
And so they just continued to talk to you through these visitations?
Yeah, up until the last time. And that's when this one person who seemed to have more authority stands up in front of this room that I'm in with about 75 of you. It's kind of like a social that you would go to, a chamber of commerce. I don't know if anybody's ever gone to a chamber of commerce social or something like that. You had all the business people around talking to each other. Well, this one person kind of gets up in front of the room. He says, "Can I have your attention?" And everybody's quiet, and they look to the front of the room, and he says, "We need someone to kill Peter Kling." And I immediately turned. I always had this guide with me. I was never allowed to be alone. I always had this guide with me, and I turned right to him and I said, "Why do they want to kill me?" And the only response was that, and he told me, "It is because you crossed the line." There was no emotion involved. That's one thing. When they spoke, there was a lack of emotion. You know how we can get passionate when we're talking about things, but they never did. They weren't emotional creatures. Everything was very matter of fact, and so I just could never understand. I had a strong feeling of what these alien creatures were.
Okay, Peter, can I ask you another question? Did they look like all the same sex, or did they look like maybe there were some males and some females?
They were male and female.
Oh, there were. And there was a difference?
I'm sorry?
There was a difference? You could tell?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
okay.
Like I said, they were very human looking. Just taller. And it's not like they all have blonde hair. There was nothing that would make me necessarily feel out of place besides the way that they were dressed and the fact that we were always subterranean somewhere. There was never any, garden to go. There was never any outside. But it's just interesting. What's interesting is that how it ended was just very matter-of-factly, and that was it. That was the end of the contact. Now, you wouldn't normally think anything strange about that, except that about a month later, I had a motorcycle accident. I unfortunately wrecked a motorcycle doing over 60 miles an hour. I got a case of The wild thing about that is I had a glass jar in my pocket right about at my stomach level, and before I even got on the highway, I thought, boy, that would really stink if I wrecked this bike. They'd be picking my glass out of my guts for a week. And 5 minutes later, I was in an accident. The lid of the jar unscrewed. The jar never broke. The jar never broke. About 2 months after that, I had just gotten a new car. It was a nice little Triumph GT6. I was living in North Carolina, in the mountains of North Carolina at the time, and I was going over to see a friend of mine in Knoxville. And on my way over, I lost the left front tire, come right off, and rolled the car down a riverbank. So here were two things that should have ended my life and didn't. And as the events would go on in my life, it turns out my brother and I actually counted them up one night a couple of years ago. And I'm now up to actually, since my 18th birthday, 14 times I should have been dead, and I actually was dead once and got sent back. Yeah, I had a near-death experience too, so I understand a little bit about the soul, and our body dies. Our consciousness does not. It does not.
Yes. Okay, so now, do you want to lead us into where we came from then?
Yeah, well, now, here's an interesting thing. If you look at what it says in Genesis, the 9th chapter and the 5th verse, it says that God would ask back the soul from every living creature, and from man himself he will ask back his soul. And our soul is tied up in our blood, because at the same time he told, in the same scripture, he told Noah that he could eat meat, but he couldn't eat meat with the blood in it. The blood had to be drained out, and there was a connection between the blood and the soul, and that has come around full circle. Think about all the human sacrifices that have been done over the years to gods. There's something about that we'll get into it maybe on another show. But here's the thing, so we're connected through our soul. Now, I had someone tell me, and I love this, everybody has an aura. It's the energy field around our body, and it can be photographed. You use Kirlian photography, you can photograph the energy coming off your body. If you're aware and conscious and relaxed enough, you can actually expand your aura out. I've expanded my aura out over 100 feet already. You can fill up a room with your aura. You have somebody who just like walk into a room, a speaker or something, all of a sudden everybody is just like, they're just listening because of the aura that person has. It's like, it's contagious. Our auras are contagious. We're all connected through that energy. And this person said this, our aura is our soul leaking out of our bodies, our three-dimensional bodies. So now here's the thing. This is an energy force. What's it made out of? Good question. And if it's connected back to God, how's it connected back to God? But really, a better question is, what is God?
Yes, what is God?
So here, this took 2 years for me to figure this out. I'm not that big of a genius. Yeah, I know a lot because I learned a lot. But I thought, is God this old man with gray hair who loves to ride around on clouds and listen to harp music? And I was like, okay, well, let's look at the scriptures. What did the scriptures say about God? God is this, God is that. And it gets to Revelation, and God is talking about himself, and he says, I am the Alpha and the Omega. I'm the first and the last, okay? Before me there was nothing, and after me there will be nothing. And now here's an interesting thing. We know by the laws of physics, one of the first laws of physics, you can neither create nor destroy energy. Right. And so you can only transform it. You can only change it from one state to another state. So if nothing existed, and we know we cannot create or destroy energy, then the only thing that could have existed is pure energy in its most pure form or state. And we know that this energy had to be intelligent and it had to be conscious, because we are intelligent and we are conscious. So now the question is, what turned this energy into God? What made this energy become, as the Hebrew name for God is Yahweh, right, which means he who causes to become. So what causes energy to become Yahweh?
And that's in the Bible.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter. It should be in the Bible a lot more than what it actually is. But that's the actual Hebrew tetragrammaton that you have posted, and it's read from right to left. Hebrew is read from right to left, and those are the Hebrew letters for YHWH, and so we kind of invert it and stick the vowels in. The Hebrews did not use vowels; they just used H or consonants when they wrote things down, and put the vowels in as you go along. So you kind of had to know the context of the language, you know, of what you were talking about to know which vowels to put in, so you got the right meanings back out. Anyway, so what was this one thing that changed this pure dynamic energy into God or Yahweh? This energy came up with a concept. The concept of love. Think about this. The more we give love, the better we feel. The more we get love, the better we feel. And you can never love someone or something so much that it is damaging to you, or you can never turn around and get so much love that it's damaging to you. And you can love works on so many different levels. You can love your car, you can love your bicycle if you're a kid, or even if you're an adult. I'm sure Lance Armstrong loved his bicycle. You can love your kids, you can love your house, you can love your neighborhood, you can love your parents, you can love your grandparents, you can love that significant other in a way no one else can. And when you read 1 John, the 4th chapter, the 8th verse, I believe it's the 8th verse, it says God is love. Well, if God's love, why is it so much war in the Bible? Why are so many nations getting wiped out? Well, see, here's the interesting thing. The nations which are going to war are what you would call nations that worship these other gods. Well, where did the other gods come from? What other gods are there? We'll examine that. If this energy that we know of, or that we're talking about, that this pure dynamic energy changed, it actually didn't change into the three-dimensional universe that we live in, because we know now by string theory and M theory, we don't live in a three-dimensional universe. We live in a multiverse of at least 10 dimensions plus the variable dimension of time. Time does vary depending where you are, how fast you're going, and the dimension you happen to be in at the time. The Bible equation is that 1,000 years for man is but a day for God. Think about that. See you tomorrow. 1,000 years later, he comes back. You know? What am I going to say? We want to count time on our standard, and our time is Earth 3D time. We don't take into multiverse time, which is 10 dimensions, you see? And so everything runs by a different clock. But now, here's the interesting thing. These 10 dimensions, according to the mathematics, are comprised of our physical 3 dimensions and 7 spatial dimensions. And the 7 spatial dimensions are smaller, physically smaller, mathematically smaller anyway, than the 3 physical dimensions that we live in. So, in essence, that means that we are literally within God, and He is literally within us, because we are a symbiotic. We have a symbiotic relationship, not with just this Earth, but with the galaxy and with indeed the whole universe, the 3-dimensional universe, and the other 7-dimensional universe. It's all together. Now, here's an interesting thing. Scientists have come to the conclusion that the Earth is a living organism, and that it might be conscious. And then they expanded that to, you know, the universe might be a living, conscious organism that we are part of. Yeah, you know what? And the universe is 10 dimensions, not 3, which means we are living within something that we don't understand at all.
Well, you know, Peter, if God is love, what about these people that commit horrific crimes? How could God be in them?
Thank you. You know, you brought up a good point here. You brought up the tree of duality. We are told we need to know good and bad. Let's take a look at Earth, though, for a second. You know, we had to get here somehow. So, when you start off with the Bible, in the beginning, it says, in the beginning, God created heavens and earth. Scientists call it the Big Bang. They're adjusting that theory to think that, well, maybe it wasn't a Big Bang, but a energy transformation. Don't ask me to explain it. This is a new theory that they've come up with. But I'll go along with the Big Bang. Something changed this universe that we lived in. Something started it. We know that. It came from somewhere. Where did it come from? All of this pure dynamic energy. Interesting. Now we've got a source for where we came from. So now, it would make sense that if we live in 10 dimensions, that it wouldn't just be the physical 3 dimensions that would have life in them, would it? Why wouldn't you have life in as many dimensions as you could. And in fact, it seems, according to what's recorded in the scriptures, it seems that that is indeed the case, that there is life in other dimensions. That's one reason people see orbs floating around. Oh, it just showed up. Oh, it went away. Where did it go? It jumped into a different dimension. You know, there are other life forms out there, and they are not human. We can classify them as alien. And the scriptures would even agree with that, because the scriptures say, look, there's angels, there's cherubs, there's seraphs, there's at least one archangel, and maybe more. And those are just 4 of the different life forms besides the life form of Yahweh.
So you're saying that orbs are aliens? They're alien energy?
They could very well be intelligent energy. I had a very interesting experience 2 years ago, this month, as a matter of fact. I was bringing my son home from college. And I had just set the cruise control in my car for 63 miles an hour, so I know exactly how fast I was going. It was on a beautiful, nice, straight piece of road, tree line, the sun was setting, and my son was fiddling with the CD player, and I looked over and I pointed to the button that he needed to push, and when I looked up, I see this huge deer jump out of the tree line right at the edge of the road and make a leap across the road. This deer is in the air, and I'm traveling at 63 miles an hour, and while all this is happening, all of a sudden a blue orb appears. It's about the size of a grapefruit, and it blows up like a balloon. And it got between me and the deer. I hit the deer went right into the windshield. Now, interesting thing, the deer actually urinated down the driver's side of the car. And its antlers, and I figured the live weight of this deer, I used a deer hunt way back when it was expected. I would put the live weight of this deer between 250 to 275 pounds, in that range. The antlers dented the rain gutter on the passenger side of the car. So this deer went across the whole entire windshield.
God.
And it bounced off. It bounced off. I figured, this is it, we're dead. And now, what was that blue orb, and where did it come from? Interesting thing, I never closed my eyes. I'm like mesmerized by what I'm seeing in front of me. My son hears me say a word I won't say on the air. He looks up, and he sees something blue and gray in his vision. He immediately shuts his eyes. His face was entirely sprayed with glass from the windshield. I got hit with 2 little pieces, one on each cheek. I stopped the car and I was like, whoa, what did I just see? What just happened? I jumped out and looked at the front of the car. When you look at the windshield, and I posted these pictures on my Facebook page, so if you're not a Facebook friend, please join me on Facebook. I put out a lot of information on Facebook. When you look at the pictures of the car, the windshield has a round depression in it, about a 30-inch depression right in the middle of the windshield, right where the orb was. Now, that was on a Friday evening. On the following Monday morning, there was a lead-off story in the news on how a family of 3 hit a deer, a much smaller deer, was a doe, and they were doing 45 miles an hour. The deer went through the front windshield and out the back, put all 3 of them in the hospital in critical condition. Had that deer come through our car at the speed that I was going, we would have been decapitated.
Oh my God.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind, because this deer filled up the whole windshield. So have something coming through your windshield at that speed?
Oh my God.
Yeah, you don't stand a chance. But yet, something happened. Now, what was this blue orb?
Yeah, what was it?
I named him George. I don't know what else to say. It came out of nowhere. It didn't streak in. It instantly appeared. The only thing that I noticed just before it appeared, it looked like, you ever kind of look down the highway on a summer's day and you watch the heat come off of it?
Yeah.
Everything just started to like shake, like there was a little vibrancy, or it wasn't crystal clear anymore. There was something there, and that was the instant the orb appeared. And then I'm wondering, what in the world is this orb? And everything happened so quick, it was like, well, after the fact, I literally sat there for 45 minutes. I drove to a safe place, pulled off, waited for someone to show up so we can get the car to a body shop. I wound up driving to the body shop. I just had to look through the cracks in the windshield. But I wanted my son to be there with me to follow me. But all the time that I was sitting there, all I was doing was replaying the same thing over and over and over in my mind. And what did I say? And I have no explanation for it except there was some intelligent life form that came in from another dimension and saved my butt.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I've kind of been caught in between the bad aliens and the good aliens. I got one side that wants to kill me and the other side that wants to keep me going, and it's probably has a lot to do with me getting to the point of writing my book.
Now, can we just take a little break here, just to, in case anybody, right now, if you have any questions, type them in for me, and we can ask those to Peter. Everybody, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Yes, I do thank everybody for joining us too. I'm glad you're with us, and I hope I'm not boring you. But you know, I want this really to be a little bit less about me and more about the book. We can save my story for another time. We're kind of running short on time here. You know, here's the thing though. If you look through the biblical record, if you look through what has been put on the sides of hieroglyphs and what's been written in cuneiform writing, we have alien contact all through our history. And even when you're looking at the scriptures, you know, God says, let us make man in our image. And now, well, so what's the image of God? The image of man? No, it comes back to that spiritual soul. Now here's the interesting thing. How did we get here? Well, if you look at Genesis, the 2nd chapter, around the 20th verse, God says, it's not good that the man lives by himself. I'm going to make a helper for him. And so he puts the man to sleep, he removes a rib, he closes over the wound, and then he builds a woman, or makes a woman. And he, at the account says, he brings her to the man, and the man says, at last, this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. And indeed what happened was, here is the first account of genetic engineering. What God did, or what God told somebody to do, was to remove a tissue sample and use that DNA to genetically engineer a female version of Adam. So the chromosomes had to be changed, the different settings on, you know, different body parts growing different places needed to be changed around. So life on Earth more than likely didn't evolve. More than likely it was genetically engineered. And we know that it didn't evolve for one interesting thing. You get to the Precambrian period and the Cambrian period. The Bible says God's active force moved to and fro over the watery deep. This is in Genesis, this is the 1st chapter, the 2nd verse. And the Precambrian period says that, well, what they say about the Precambrian period was, well, there was just very simple bacterial life forms. We know them as cyanobacteria today. And by the end of the Precambrian period, the most complicated life form was a simple jellyfish. And then we have the Cambrian period. And here's the interesting thing about the Cambrian period. Never before and never since on this planet has there been so much genetic information downloaded. There were more life forms in existence during the Cambrian period than have ever been on the face of the earth since. Think about that. You know, where did all this DNA information come from? Where did all the genetics come from? It had to come from somewhere. It didn't just happen. So let's say maybe the genetic engineers were sent in to shake and bake this planet. And you see, sometimes God does something, and other times he gives commands for something to be done. So it's very well possible, and more than likely, that we are products of genetic engineering. Now, who are the genetic engineers? That's another question. You see, now, if there are other life forms involved, they have an interest in this planet. They help develop it. Maybe they should even think that they should be gods over this planet because they can interact with the 3rd dimension. Yahweh does not interact directly with the 3rd dimension. Moses wanted to see the face of God, and Yahweh told him, no man can see God but yet live. Think about God as antimatter, or what they're trying to do, and this is interesting, with the over in CERN, with the Hadron Collider, they are trying to get the God particle. They're trying to capture the God particle, and you know when they're going to try to do it? December 21st, 2012, just as we're going across the alignment of the galactic plane. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, how about that?
Wow.
And if you're wondering what the God particle is, if you saw the movie, the Da Vinci, no, it was Angels and Demons.
Yeah.
Angels and Demons was about the God particle. So we're dealing with pure antimatter. We are matter. We are physical matter in these three dimensions. But, so we can't have direct contact with antimatter. So that would be very logical that the God particle, or Yahweh, is indeed physical antimatter. Maybe that's why anybody with a near-death experience, in the vast majority of cases, will tell you the great white light is there. Believe me, it's there. I consciously saw it.
I have a question. One of the viewers, Cheyenne, my moderator, has a question about aliens and the Bible. Now, we are so different from aliens, and she wants to know about, is there a different Bible for aliens? But they're not like us.
If there's a different Bible for aliens, it's probably called the Kabbalah.
Oh.
Yeah, they're not like us. But you have to, let's go back. If they're interdimensional, if they can move between dimensions, then they wouldn't be like us. Can use some string theory to understand this. String theory says that all energy is made up of little vibrating strings, kind of like the strings on a guitar or a piano or a violin. When you pluck or play that string, it plays a specific note. So the string within our very molecules, the protons, electrons, and neutrons, the energy that makes them up are these little tiny particles of string that vibrate at a specific speed. And if you have different and there are actually two different types of string. There's linear string and there's circular string, kind of like a rubber band. So depending on what a substance is made out of, it's going to be made out of the atoms, and neutrons, protons, and electrons are all going to be made out of this string vibrating at a preset speed. But now, what if you were just pure string? What if you were pure energy? You see, and what if you had the ability to turn around and set that string for any level of frequency or vibration that you wanted? You see, then you can go from one dimension to another. It won't make any difference. Now, it's interesting because both the book of Enoch, which is not part of the Bible canon, and the book of Genesis talk about, in the Bible, they're called the sons of the true God. In the book of Enoch, they're called the Watchers. And the story is that they come to Earth and they take women for their wives. Earth women are hot, what can I say? And they father the Nephilim. And these are the mighty men of old. Hercules was a Nephilim. The account in Enoch says that these things were huge. They were gigantic. Mm-hmm. They weren't like 10, 12 feet tall. They were, according to his account, they may have been more resembling the Titans of Greek mythology. They were close to 100, 150 feet high. They measured them in cubits. A cubic is about 16 to 18 inches. So these things were enormous, and they were creating a lot of damage within the earth, and that's why God wanted to destroy it with using the flood, which may have been the last time Planet X or Nibiru or whatever it was swung around. Anyway, that's another show. So we have this account in two books, and then we go into what we can call the secular or historical account, which Zachariah Stitchin kind of pioneered, even though he's kind of lost his way from fame. But he did get into a lot of the different texts, and he tells us that, hey, the Anunnaki, who were aliens, visited the Sumerians, and they gave them all sorts of technology, and they told the Sumerians that they helped create us, or they genetically engineered us. Boy, now where does that story, where else do we find that we're genetically engineered? That's right, in Genesis. We have this interaction with these beings that set themselves up as gods, and they invented religion and government for us. And that's where civilization starts, is on the plains of Mesopotamia under the government of Nimrod. And it's interesting, Nimrod sets himself up as as the sun god. His wife, Syrianus, becomes the goddess of the earth, moon, and stars. And after Nimrod's death, Syrianus becomes pregnant, and she claims that it's Nimrod incarnate, and that she's giving birth to a star child, and she names the child Tammuz. And this story goes down through history through The Egyptians, the first world power, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medes and Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, and we even carry it today because the church is the Catholic Church tells us the same thing. They tell us that they deified Mary and she's the mother of God. And so really Syrianus, close to 4,000 years ago, was the first Madonna. Now, interestingly enough, we know the story best through Egyptology. And we know the story more through Isis and Horus and Osiris. And there's a reason for that. We have a direct connection here back to this. And that is, look at your money. Look at the back of your money, and what do you see? There's a pyramid there. And what's above the pyramid? The eye of Osiris, the eye of Ra, the eye of the sun god. Now, there's a connection, and it's interesting, the connection that can be found from our day today back into ancient Egypt can be found both in the book of Amos, but I like the account in the book of Acts better. It's Acts 7, 42 and 43. And the disciple Stephen is standing before the Sanhedrin, and this is the Jewish high court of Jerusalem, and he says, he's quoting the book of, he's quoting the prophet Amos. He says, "Was it to me, O Israel, to whom you worshipped those 40 years in the wilderness? No, it was to the tent of Molech and the star of the god Raphan." Molech and Raphan. Now, this is interesting that they're actually interchangeable. Molech is a title. It means terrible king or terrible god. God king, actually. Raphan is the star child. Oh, same as Tammuz, you mean? Yeah. You know, it's interesting. The Egyptians had 72 terms for bull worship. They had 76 terms for sun worship. So those two are closely brought together. That's why you have the horn.
And the star is like the Star of David.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Like I'm posting.
It's been adopted as the Star of David, but wait a minute. If you do the research, you find out why is the Star of Molech. And Molech, here's the thing about Molech. Molech required live child sacrifice. Think about that. Live child sacrifice. Now, why would the Star of Molech be put on the flag of Israel, and why would everybody be told that it's the Star of David? Here's the fact. If you go back into history and you read the accounts of David, David killed Molech worshippers. He put them to the sword. There's a song that was dedicated where Saul, who was the king at the time, killed his thousands, but David killed his 10,000s. And these were the Molech worshippers that David was putting to the sword, that David is responsible for killing. So it's a direct insult to the king, to King David, the king of the Jews, if you want to call it that, or the king of Israel.
So why did they use the Star of David?
Well, let's go read Revelation 3, chapter 3, verse 9, where it says, it says, the synagogue of Satan. It talks about the synagogue of Satan, Jews who say they are Jews but are not, and are lying, and they will be brought before you to do obeisance. Well, could that be the Khazars who are responsible for the banking situation that we have? Let's see, who are the Khazars? The Rothschild family, Henry Kissinger. As a matter of fact, most of your banking families are not true Hebrew Jews. If you want to look at the true Hebrew Jews, look at the Hasidic group of Jews. They don't like the Zionists. It's interesting. They hate Zionists, Hasidic Jews do. And so here, there's a situation. What do we see? It's the politics of the Zionist movement, which is causing a lot of problems in the Middle East. Let's face it, they would make Palestine, if they would make peace with Palestine, the whole world would go nice and easy for a while.
So
but this is still going on today.
So Peter, why is this on our money? Why is that symbol, the pyramid with the eye, that if you do the corners...
When you turn over your money, what do you see? It doesn't say United States of America, issued by the United States of America. It says Federal Reserve note. And who owns the Federal Reserve? It goes right back to these same group of people. The Federal Reserve is actually owned by the Rothschild family. And the Rothschild family is said to, well, when I wrote Letters to Earth, they were said to control over $500 trillion. Think about that. Over $500 trillion. They were money lenders back in the 1700s. They got into the banking business and started doing banking with royalty, and then they financed the war between France and England. They were financing Napoleon, who destroyed all of Europe, and they were financing Wellington, who defeated Napoleon, as we know. Interestingly enough, they actually, with the news of that, they were able to capture the English economy. They captured financially the Bank of England, and so the fact of the matter is, the Rothschild family owns a Federal Reserve Bank in almost every country in the whole entire world. The countries that they didn't own them in were Libya and Iraq. The ones that they don't own them in yet are Iran, Cuba, and North Korea. Let's see. Isn't that the axis of evil? Well, especially Iran and North Korea, and there's no Federal Reserve Bank there. Gee, what is there any connection between that?
And we had talked about this the other day, about how they became so powerful, and I had asked you about Lucifer. If they had
see now, here's where the connection comes back. You see, it's this same religious faction who's been worshiping these alien gods, and trust me, they're alien gods. Here's a little interesting side note: more people believed in God and went to church in America at the beginning of the 20th century, and almost everyone went to church and believed in God at the beginning of the 20th century. Almost no one believed in aliens. The fact is, today in the 21st century, more people believe in aliens than believe in God. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. More people believe in aliens and UFOs than God. So now you have to raise the question, did the gods of our ancestors become the aliens of today? And now you get into a whole different situation. So we can't deny that these life forms exist and are maneuvering things in our world today. If you look at Daniel in the 10th chapter, he's praying, and he's wanting information for the future of the nation of Israel. He's being held by Artaxerxes, the Persian, and he finally gets a message, and it's the angel Gabriel that comes through, and Gabriel says, "Hey, sorry I'm late, but I was at a wrestling with the Prince of Persia. He wouldn't let me pass, and I had to go back and get Michael, the foremost one, to come and wrestle with the Prince of Persia so I could deliver the message." And when he was done delivering the message, he says, "Well, I got to go back and wrestle with the Prince of Persia again. And look, the Prince of Greece is coming." Now, these are more than likely alien life forms who are controlling the world powers, and have been controlling the world powers, and who have indeed been worshipped by the world powers throughout history. Today, we still have Molech worshippers. Let's go to Bohemian Grove. You see, Bohemian Grove, they have an owl there, which is 40 foot tall, stone owl, and they have the cremation of care ceremony. The world's most powerful men get to do whatever they want to do without anybody else knowing for 2 weeks. And they start off with the cremation of care before the god Molech. Now, it's interesting. I believe it's either the Greeks or the Assyrians, I forget exactly which world power it is, that changes Molech over to an owl. It becomes the owl of wisdom.
Now, Peter, that owl is also on our money as well, isn't it?
Yeah, if you look up at if you take out a $1 bill and you look up at the one in the upper right-hand corner, right on the ledge and the little framing around the one, you'll see sitting right on the edge there, there's a little bump. When you look close, it's a little owl that's looking back at you. Here's something else that's wild. Go to Google Earth, or go to Google Maps, and go to Washington, D.C., and look at the grounds of Capitol building. They are laid out in the shape of an owl.
Oh my God.
And one of the patron gods of Skull and Bones is an owl. So, here's this connection we've had. Now, this is Molech today, the owl of wisdom. Back during the time of Israel, he was a god that was part bull and part, he had a bull's head but a human's body, and he required live child sacrifice. You can go look this up on Google. Go to Google Images if you want to see exactly what he looked like. Molech, M-O-L-E-C-H. It's also pronounced Moloch. spelled M-O-L-O-C-H. And it's tied directly together to the star god Raphan. The god Raphan in Rome was called Saturn, and they celebrated the winter solstice holiday of Saturnalia. When the Holy Roman Catholic Church came about, they changed the name Saturnalia to Merry Christmas. So in essence, the church is committing an act of sun worship, worshiping the return of the sun, S-U-N, and not the S-O-N of God. What they're doing is they're holding up a dead man on a stick saying, here's your God, right here. We got your God, dead on a stick.
Now, Peter,
yeah.
you were going to go into the sacrifice of children.
Well, you know, here's a fact. Every year around the world, about 750,000 kids disappear. They're kidnapped. They're able to get back about 250,000, about 250,000 of them they find. They're with parents, relatives, they ran away from home, whatever the case might be. The 500,000 that they never see again. They vanish off the face of the earth, never to be seen or heard of again. Now, where do 100 million, where do 500,000 children go every year?
We think that the aliens took them.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that because there are YouTube videos that are sent to us by aliens. They call the Galactic Federation of Light, and they almost admit to doing this. If anybody's watched any of these videos, they're telling us, yes, we're giving you government technology. Yes, they're letting us do experiments and take people with us. Yes, they admit to all this, oddly enough. Now, interestingly, they say that their leader is the Creator who made us, who genetically engineered us, and they call him Lucifer. Whoa.
Ooh.
Did I hear that right? Lucifer? Yeah, they call him Lucifer, the God, it's the angel of darkness who keeps on turning himself into an angel of light, as the scriptures would tell us. Now, you know, I want to touch one point here. People say that the Bible's been changed. Well, if it's been changed, they should continue to change it, because in the prophecies for the last days, these wicked people who are ruling this earth, the ones who are creating the wars, the ones who have enslaved us to a banking system of fraud that doesn't work, those who are taking our homes, who have taken our land, and who have devalued our dollar down to nothing, those are the ones who are these same Luciferian or Lucifer worshippers who are large and in charge. And these are the ones that Armageddon is going to do away with.
But people, like we were talking the other day about the Rothschilds, about some of the rock stars, and about this Jimmy Rogers from the early 1900s, that they sold their souls to the devil for fame and fortune.
Yeah, and you know, they're coming right out and telling you that today. I can't remember, I think it's Beyonce. Is it Beyonce?
Oh, Rihanna. I think you said it was Rihanna.
Or maybe it was, you know, it could be both. It's one or the other. But I've heard this several times, and I've heard it over the years that, not the same exact thing, with Rihanna, I believe it could, you got to go verify this. This is information that I've seen on YouTube. It's also information that I've gotten feedback on from other people who have been telling me the same thing. I'm not a big pop fan, so I don't follow the music culture all that closely. I'm buried in research. I keep my finger on the world events, not on rock stars. But yeah, she says that she gets this entity which comes into her and does the performing. So she actually accepts what you would consider a classic demon possession, and most people who have this happen turn around and have a fighting against the spirit. They don't want this creature inside them, and so, you know, because they start going mad, and they go from exorcism. or they'll see some kind of a healer that will chase them away using the name of Yahweh, or chase them away in the name of Jesus Christ. They'll go through some sort of a situation to get rid of this evil spirit. But here's the thing. They can be, these life forms, because, now I'm not going to say all of them, but certainly some of them, some of the most influential ones, they are not three-dimensional, which means they do not adhere to the laws of the third dimension. And they can be, essentially, they can occupy the same space as you can. There's an interesting account in the book of Matthew, I believe it's the book of Matthew, where Jesus is walking with his disciples along the road, and they were approached by this madman. And the story about this madman is he's demon-possessed. They've tried to chain him down. The local townspeople have tried to chain him down. He just pulls the chains out, and he comes racing down. He lives in a cemetery. He comes racing down toward Jesus, and he says, "What do I have to do with you?" And Jesus asks him his name, and this man says, "My name is Legion, because we are many." And it's believed that there may have been 1,000 of these things living inside this man. As the account goes, they ask if they come out of this man willingly, if they'll be allowed to inhabit a herd of swine. And Jesus says, "Yeah, okay, that's a deal." They go into the herd of swine. The account says that the swine jump off a cliff and into the water and drowned. So, and then the number of the swine is over 1,000 of them. So it's an interesting account. And we have accounts of this today where people have met up with these things. Come on, there's this TV series, Ghost Hunters, and all of that. It's probably about a half a dozen TV programs that deal with the subject of poltergeists and life that we can't actually see, but sometimes we can feel it, sometimes we hear it, we know it's there. I like the movie Ghostbusters. Come on. You gotta make fun of some of this. Otherwise it'll just eat you up. And we don't have to worry about these things, though, because what we need to be more concerned about is our relationship. Are we living in harmony with God, with Yahweh? Jesus told us the greatest commandment, and people, if you don't get this, if you don't get anything else, get this. Understand this. The greatest commandment is to love God, or to love Yahweh with your whole heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbors as you do yourself. You see, Jesus said on these two things the whole law stood. These were the most two important things. Now, there's an actual reason why. When you develop that relationship with a, quote, higher power, and it's connected to the most high power, something that could be the pure dynamic energy of this 10-dimensional multiverse we live in, the actual soul of the multiverse. See, if we connect up to that, now we are in synchronization, we're in harmony with that force. And that harmony is based in love. That's why Jesus never said, worship God. Well, actually he did, but when he was saying this, the most important thing wasn't to worship God, but to love God. God never told Adam and Eve, there's never any story before the flood account where God says, you must worship me. The only thing God told Adam and Eve back in the account of Genesis was, be fruitful, become many, and fill the earth. That was the only thing that he told them. Have in subjection the fish and the animals and the birds, and you can eat whatever kind of fruit you want, or whatever bear seed you can eat. Have a good life. I'll come back in 7,000 years and we'll see how this all turned out. He says on the seventh day, and he rested on the seventh day. So there's a rest period here. And it's lasted more than 6,000 years, and now we're going through some very dynamic changes within our own galaxy. Like I said, we're at 3 major events all supposed to happen within a very short period of time together. And the one we've already entered the photon belt, and I'll talk about that in just a second. We've got the galactic alignment, and we've got this planet X in Nibiru. When you look at the prophecies in Revelation, they're being fulfilled. Revelation chapter 8, there are several trumpet blasts. The first one talks about a third of the earth being burned up. And NASA has a satellite that just focuses on the earth and keeps track of all the forest fires. You can go online and you can find it, and when you do, you'll see that it looks like the whole earth's on fire. At least a third of it's on fire. And look at what happened here in the United States. All the forest fires that we had this year, plus a major drought. This drought is going to hurt us come 2013. It's going to hurt our pocketbooks because food prices are going to jump. So is gasoline prices because they put alcohol in gasoline and they make it from corn. Right? We're burning our food. Isn't that genius? So that has happened. You go on to the second trumpet blast in Revelation 8:9. It says, John says, I saw something like a burning mountain being thrown into the sea. And a third of the sea became as the blood of a dead man. And a third of the souls living in the sea died. And a third of the boats that were in the sea were wrecked. And what it doesn't say is that BP and Halliburton were blamed for the accident in the Gulf of Mexico. Didn't we see something like a burning mountain being thrown into the sea? And look at the disaster that it caused. And then they treated it with what? Throwing more toxic chemicals on top of it to make all the oil sink to the bottom and ruin the whole entire ecosystem down there. They just settled that case today, or yesterday, as a matter of fact. $4.1 or $2 billion BP was handed a settlement.
Yeah.
Like that's going to start to clean up the mess. Whatever. But the next thing is even more interesting. It says, a star falls from heaven, and it poisons a third of the waters of the earth, a third of the rivers, and a third of the fountains. Now, rivers and fountains are drinking water. And it goes on and it says that the star's name was Wormwood. And it's interesting because the wormwood in Russian is pronounced Chernobyl.
Oh my
God. We have something that's 30,000 times worse than Chernobyl, probably more than 100,000 times worse than Chernobyl, over in Fukushima. And Fukushima has indeed polluted a third of the drinking water on Earth. The whole northern hemisphere is polluted with radioactive particles from Fukushima. Death tolls are up, especially on the West Coast. A year ago, infant mortality rates were already up 40% in the Washington, in the SeaTac area of Washington State and in the area of Vancouver, British Columbia.
Now, Peter, you had mentioned earlier that about December 21st. Did you mention about that? And I know there's a lot of people that are worried because they think the end of the world is going to happen on December 21st. But you, in fact, said good things are going to happen.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say good things are going to happen, but I don't expect too many anomalies or bad things to happen. There are some possibilities that we are going to see some minor things happen. We might see, the sun looking a little funny. We might see some pretty serious solar flares. It's kind of difficult to say exactly what's going to happen because those people with the instruments aren't talking. Those people have been running the experiments. Those people with the supercomputers that are punching all this stuff in, they know what's going on out there with all of this, and they're ready for it. That's why CERN's getting ready to be fired up. They're ready to do an experiment as we come into the galactic alignment. The exact alignment is said to only last about 8 minutes, but it'll take 3 days to pass through it, kind of like an eclipse.
Now, the other day you were telling me too about 2014, about good things are going to happen, and
well, yeah. Here's the thing. We see so many different criticalities going around the Earth today. We see the economy is terrible everywhere except for maybe China. We see the Middle East breaking out in war, and it only wants to get bigger. The war in Afghanistan and Iraq don't seem to be going away. We just don't hear about it that much on the news anymore. At the same time, we've got major earthquakes and weather anomalies happening, and some of them may be caused by HAARP. But we've got all these things to be concerned about. And we're told in the scriptures that difficult times, hard to deal with, would be here. Jesus said there would be earthquakes in one place after another. There would be food shortages. There would be wars and rumors of wars. And all these things are just the beginning of what is going to happen. Now, after we pass over this little 2012 thing, the galactic alignment, we're going to go into a period of time where we can expect something to happen. Exactly what, I'm not sure. But there's a lot of chatter about the economy going down the tubes, and I'm hearing some backlash about, I say backlash, they want to try to have this situation, the economy situation, resolved by April. And that's what I'm hearing by some connected people back to the Rothschild family, interestingly enough. So they're aware of something major is going to happen. But we need to pay attention to exactly what happens this March. This March is the pivotal date, March 21st. Now, the 21st of December, let's get the months in order. The 21st of December, the Mayans say end this last Baktuno, the last long count of their calendar, and it starts the next cycle, the next long cycle. It starts the medium cycle and the short cycle. All three counts restart now on the 22nd of December. And what they also say is that the return of their snake god, Quetzalcoatl, is coming back, and he is going to rule. So now the question is, who is this snake god? It's actually a feathered serpent, as they refer to him as. Could this be the same serpent that is referred to back in the Garden of Eden story? With the tree of duality of life? Maybe. Is this an alien that's coming back, or an alien group? The Galactic Federation of Light, who claims to be a council of aliens, claims that they're coming. So will we see some sort of an alien occupation? We might.
Okay, so
we might see something else. I don't know, but it's a date marker, so we need to watch what happens, the actual events that happen between December 21st. But we're going to see more develop by March 21st, which is the summer, which is the spring equinox.
okay, can we stop part 1 and then start part 2? Because I know you have more you want to say. Okay, everybody, I'm going to stop this. And this will be part 1, and then I'm going to restart again. Okay, so everybody just stand by. I'm going to stop the show, and then I will restart. And Peter, hang on. Don't go anywhere.
Not a problem. We'll pick this back up just on the other side.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, everybody. This is the end of part 1. Thank you so much.